Hi, a quick video to show you how to install and configure InfoFusion with WEM 10.5. I'm using the knowledge base item available on knowledge@opentext.com, and this is usable for version 10.5 and 8.5. It gives you an overview of the ports that need to be made available before you install InfoFusion, so I want to make sure that those ports are available. It also goes through details on where to download and how to extract the installation. The custom install requires 3 services to be installed, and then some additional details on starting and stopping the various services after installation. I'm actually going to be doing an upgrade or an in-place install over Solar. So I have an existing instance of Solar that I've already uninstalled from my server, in this case Windows 2012 R2. Before installing InfoFusion, I want to turn off my management endpoint. So I've already gone into my job console and I've put my management endpoint on standby. Then I can simply replace the Solar instance with an InfoFusion instance and then reindex and then bring everything back online. So to install InfoFusion, I download the bits and I run the installer as administrator. Once the installer is started, I'm going to click Next. I'm going to accept the agreement. I'm going to change the installation path to the standard OpenText path. I'm going to deselect the services that I don't need: CLI Admin Tool, Ingestion Pipeline, and Search API. For WEM 10.5 to work, I only need the search engine, Zookeeper, which is going to provide our clustering, and then the System API. I click Next, and then I install. As part of the installation process, we can change the username, password, and port of the processes we selected for the install. In this case, we'll accept the default usernames, passwords, and ports. And then we click Done. Now I will open up some additional windows for each of the processes. You can simply close those. And then navigate to the bin directory of InfoFusion search, and I open a command prompt as administrator. And I need to first run InfoFusion and make sure it works before I configure it to use with WEM. So to start everything up, I'll use the OTIF batch file and go ahead and start everything up. So I'm going to start the Zookeeper service first, or the Zookeeper process. It's not a service yet. Opens up another window. I can just minimize that. And I'll use the same command prompt to start the other services. The recommended order is Zookeeper, Solar, followed by Tomcat. So now Solar is running. I can minimize that window. And then finally I'll start the Tomcat service, or the Tomcat instance. Once those are running, I can test and see if they're actually running by going to those ports. The default port is 8983, and the default instance is SOLR. You can see that the Solar service is running and Tomcat is running. I can look at my core admin and see there are no cores yet, so I need to add some cores. And the fastest way to add a core is to copy the existing core from WEM and configure it. Later, once we're installing Portal, our collaboration, or additional delivery server instances, we can use this interface to create cores manually. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the search engine before I update the core. I'll do that at the command prompt. I'll use the same command, but stop. Once Solar is stopped, I can go grab the example core that comes with WEM and copy it to the right location. The example core in WEM is located in WEM Content 10.5 ADM Search Solar. And we're going to be using the InfoFusion core, which is using Solr version 4.6. So I'm going to grab those cores, and I'm going to go ahead and copy all of them. And I'm going to open up another file prompt, command prompt, and then paste that into our core directory. InfoFusion is a little different in that the core directory where we copy our cores is in a slightly different path. It's under Jetty Solr. I'm just going to copy those cores there. I'll do a Control V. And once they're copied, I'm going to edit the default Solr configuration and make sure it looks okay. In InfoFusion, we don't need to specify the core definitions here. Those will be picked up automatically by their location in that folder. We just need to make sure that these parameters are correct for our environment. If we need to change those, we need to change those here, for example. The next step is to add some additional lines to OTIF script to push the new WEM configuration. There are examples of that script in the installation guide. Here I've already copied those examples here in the install script directory, and I can open that. And these are the lines that will be used to update the Solr core configuration from Zookeeper. We'll be using a utility in Zookeeper called pushconfigs to push the new cores into the Solr search engine. So before we make changes to OTIF batch file, I'm going to make a copy of it first. And then I'm going to edit otif.bat. And I'm going to scroll down to the section where we're defining pushconfig. And there's pushconfigs. I'm going to remove the existing pushconfigs because they're not needed for WEM integration. I'm just going to get rid of all of those. And I'm going to paste my new pushconfigs for WEM. And then I'm going to save otif.bat. Once that's saved, I can run Zookeeper. I can run this pushconfigs from the command prompt and push those out to Solr. But before I do, I'm going to go ahead and open a command prompt, run OTIF, and I'm going to push configs. I want to make sure I don't see any errors there in that process. Once that's done, I'm going to restart Solr. So I'll stop Solr. It's already stopped, and then I'll start it again. Once it's started, I'm going to see if I can see my configs in the dashboard. Once Solr is running and we've pushed our configs, we should be able to see those new cores in the core admin. And here we can see our default core and our cores for our localized instances of Solr. That will support localized content coming from WEM. So the best practice after making any changes to those cores is to push configs and then restart Solr search. So before we can go to the next step, we want to go ahead and re-index the WEM content before we change these scripts into Windows services to make things more easily administered. So I'm going to go to my WEM directory at the command prompt and run the index command. So to re-index all the content that's currently stored in WEM and register it as content in the InfoFusion search engine, I need to run VGN content index. This is located in the bin directory of the install path. If you run it, you'll get all of the command lines. However, we can simply run it with typical command lines. And the only arguments we need are the host argument, which here in this case is WEM server, the username and password of the WEM user, -a, which is the indexing option, and -w is the location of the working directory that we'll be indexing. So we'll go find the working directory, which in this case is the management stage working directory. If this were a delivery stage instance, we'd have to go into the CFG agent and locate that. But here I'm just going to paste the path of our working directory and then index that content. So at this point, the content indexer is busy searching or getting the content from the management stage and adding it to the Solr search engine, or the Solr 4.6 search engine, which is part of the InfoFusion distribution. The reason we can do this is because the port numbers and the path, the core path, didn't change between Apache Solr Search 101 and InfoFusion 10.4. So we're able to simply uninstall Solr, reinstall InfoFusion, and run the index script in order to add all that content to the InfoFusion instance. This is going to take a while. If this is a production system, it could take several hours, if not days. So some of the things we can do perhaps is tune that a bit. In this case, it just takes a few moments because there were only 79 items in this fresh install. Now that I've re-indexed all the content, I'm going to go to my job console and put my endpoint back online. So I can do this directly from the job console, and I'm going to start that endpoint. Once the endpoint is back online, I should see running, and then I can refresh to make sure there's not any issues with the endpoint processing content. I'll also want to go to the content workspace and make sure I can find content. I want to make sure my search engine is working and that the content that was re-indexed is available. So in this case, I know that there's some Innovate content, for example, and I can do a search for that. I can just do a search for the word Innovate, for example, to see if there's anything that's indexed with the word Innovate. And it looks like the index is correct. It's finding content with the search engine, so that seems fine. So at this point, it looks like everything is properly indexed. We can do some additional tests on our types. For example, we can do some advanced searches to make sure all of the appropriate content has been indexed, including system objects.